Hi, I'm Timothy Bateson. I've been challenged by Joe Compton of Goindienow to answer 10 simple questions in the Writer's Life for Me Tag Challenge. So, Tag Challenge basically means 10 questions which are about your experiences as a writer, what kind of writer you are and things like that. And then we pay it forward by challenging 3 other writers to do the same thing. So, Joe Compton, I answer in the challenge, and here we go with question number 1. What kind of writer are you? Primarily, I'm a fiction writer. I write urban fantasy and science fiction short stories for the most part, but I am starting work on a novel series alongside my wife. So, yes, I'm a fiction writer, but I'm also a blogger, which is generally non-fiction materials as well as advertising for other writers out there. So I work a lot with indie writers and published writers who are looking to get a little bit more advertising to their and expand their audience. So, question number 2. When did I start writing? What made you want to try it? I've always been fascinated with writing. As a kid, I used to do a lot of writing in school, and creative writing was always one of the more interesting topics for me. I worked in a library for a while, so I was reading a lot of writers along the way, and I always got interested in the process of stories, so really that's what made me want to try doing my own. Now, when I went to college, I had to put all that on the back burner, and then I started work, and it wasn't until I met my wife that I got back into writing because she was working on a series of stories of her own, which haven't yet been published, but we're working on getting those polished up and ready to go. She has a fantasy series and a urban fantasy series, which actually ties into my own writing. It was her writing on the urban fantasy series that got me back into producing my own short stories, and then got me the idea for the main novel that we're working on right now. So that's question number 2. Question number 3. What inspires your stories? Pretty much for me, it's everything. I take inspiration from film, TV, mythology, other books, other writers, life experiences, stories people tell me. I mean, everything around us can be fitted into a story in one way or another. It's just a case of, will it be an interesting story for other people to read? And that's where, as a writer, we really have to be picky and choosy about what we include. I know a lot of times I've written something into a story and gone back and gone, yeah, I don't know about keeping that because it's not interesting. So that's where I am in terms of what inspires me. Mythology, definitely. I mean, I grew up on the stories of Arthurian legends. The British Isles is basically really one of those wonderful places where there's so much European mythology and so many different peoples have invaded over time or been enclosed within the societies that we live in. That there's stories everywhere. So there's always something to draw on. What themes do you like to explore in your writing? Is question number 4. I like to explore the stories of the underdog. I like to explore a lot of what if, and I like to see people, or in one case, a computer, going beyond what they think they're capable of, or what they're expected to be capable of. And I like to see people stretch beyond their expectations. So my story is about Richard Parsons, for example. He's actually going to discover a lot about himself in the process, and he's going to become coming up from the underdog that he is at the start of the stories to actually becoming someone far beyond what he thought he was capable of. And I think you're going to enjoy seeing that develop. So, question number 5. Are you a pantser or a plotter? Okay, a pantser is someone who writes by the seat of their pants. They sit there and they put fingers to keyboard and they just type. They don't necessarily have an idea of where their story is going to go, and they like to explore and see what happens. Then they'll often go back and pull that story into some kind of coherent outline, and actually rewrite it. If not, actually completely and utterly rip the whole thing apart for the ideas and then rebuild the story from the ground up. A plotter is someone who goes in and has an outline of what they want to write, extreme points and extreme levels of plotters will actually have to a point of each and every beat of the story. Every action will be predetermined, and then they will just go in and fill in the text. I'd like to think most of us are somewhere a combination between the two. I don't know anyone who is a complete pantser. I don't know anyone who is a complete plotter. I'm a bit of both because I've done NaNoWriMo for a number of years and written by the seat of my pants through the entire month-long period and hit 50 to 60,000 words on my story. I've come out with some very good ideas of what my story is going to be about, but I don't have a complete story. Now then, I take those points and I put them into a plot outline, and that plot outline has actually come up with, actually produced 3 short stories to date, which are 2 of which have been published. It's also produced a novel outline for me, which actually got finished as an outline beyond the point where the story had reached in NaNoWriMo, and I'm now working on that novel as well. So I'm definitely a bit of both. I write the outline very loose. I have an idea of where I want to take each chapter and what I want to reach, where I want to start, where I want to finish, and I let the outline guide where the story is going to go, but I don't define each and every action along the way that's going to get me from point A to point B. So where am I at my journey? Well, as I've already mentioned, I have been published in 3 short story anthologies already. I'm about to release the first of my own short story collection, which is going to be Under Hunter's Moon, which previously saw publication in Moon Shadows anthology from Laurel Highlands Publishing. It's now coming out under its own banner title as part of the Shadows Over Seattle series. It's one of the prequel stories because it is a short, so it's going to precede the novels and will give you a bit more background into the history of the characters and the setting. Number 7, have you entered any writing contests? I don't count entering pieces for an anthology as a contest. Those are either going to be picked up or they're not. You're not going to win either way. You might get a contract, but that's not necessarily a win from the way that these have been dealt with in my experience. I have entered a couple of paid competitions. I've entered a couple of unpaid competitions, and I have no idea where I placed in either one of them. So, yes, I've entered them. No, I haven't won. I definitely haven't final on. Who are my writing heroes? Dean Koontz. His Odd Thomas series is a very good look at the first-person perspective of how an underdog can definitely become so much more. Terry Pratchett, because he often deals with the themes of the underdog and building people up beyond their capabilities, moving them forward from story to story. But he also has a setting that is so vastly developed that it was an amazing read, and he's definitely going to be missed as one of those authors who's changed the genre. Douglas Adams, another author who's changed genre in so many respects. His Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy series was so successful as a radio series. It got turned into TV, then it went into book form, then it's been recorded time and again by various people. It got relaunched as a radio series again, I believe after his death, and so many people have been influenced by the humour of what he had there. I think a lot of people have developed as a result of it. And then I've got indie authors like Ariel Marie, Susan Stec, Lilo Abernathy, the amazing Angela B. Chrysler. I mean, each and every single one of these authors has gone out and made a successful career, or semi-career, out of writing. Angela has definitely been one of those people who has been an influence for me coming forward as an indie writer, because she's gone through a lot in her life and has actually made a point of going, well, I had to learn all these things, I'm going to help other people with them. And she's also done the cyber convention setups and everything. She's been an absolutely huge asset and influence on so many people now. It's ridiculous. In 2 years, I can't count how many people's lives she's influenced. Have I ever been to a writing conference? Is question number 9. No, I haven't. I haven't had the time or the money. As an indie writer, I haven't made a huge fortune out of my writing so far, but I'm also up in Alaska, and traveling to any of these conferences is actually pretty expensive. That's not just getting the tickets, that's getting the hotels and getting the flights. And flying anywhere from Alaska is not cheap. So, on to number 10. Top 3 tips you give to newbie writers. Tip 1. No matter what you write, edit happens. Don't be afraid to put complete gibberish down on the page when you're writing your first drafts, your second drafts, your third drafts, whatever. Everything is going to get fixed in your edit stage. You may completely and utterly rewrite the entire section. You may completely and utterly destroy parts of your story to rebuild it. Don't be afraid of that. It's one of those things. You need to be in the habit of writing. You need to be in the habit of letting yourself go. The reason for this is simply because if you don't know where the story is going to go. You might find that in like one case I had a little incident where one of my characters completely threw me for a loop. I sat down, I wrote, I knew where the scene was going, and then my character did something so unexpected that I had to throw out 2/3 of my plot because it just didn't work anymore. But I couldn't see any other reason, any way round that little foible of a character, because it was so in character for them that I couldn't see them doing anything differently. So don't be afraid to write and keep writing. That's really tip number 2, as what it kind of rolls into tip number 1 in a lot of respects. Write, 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 and keep writing. Don't be afraid to let yourself go. Let yourself write gibberish from time to time, because you're going to fix it in the edits. There's no way around it. Everything happens in editing. Tip number 3, don't stop. Don't let anything stop you. Don't be afraid to keep going. Keep trying. If you want to enter contests, enter contests. Keep entering contests. If you want to try publishing your own material, learn everything you can about the process of publishing. Learn from other people who've been there and done it already. Ask questions. Learn everything you can. And at the end of the day, it's going to make you a better rounded writer, because you're going to see so much more of the process. Make friends with other writers, because they are not your competition. At the end of the day, the only competition you have is yourself, because out there is an audience for your material. There has to be. There always will be. Even if there's only a handful of people who read what you write, you're going to find, if you make the right connections with the right people and the right readers, that those people are going to suck up everything you read and everything you produce, everything you write. They'll take your recommendations for books, they'll take your material, and they will run with it. And they will probably be your biggest advocates for it as a writer. So those are my 10 answers. My 10 questions are done. I'm paying this forward to Ariel Marie, Susan Stec, Lilo Abernathy. All 3 of these ladies are absolutely fantastic writers. Ariel Marie has been writing some absolutely fantastic urban fantasy. Susan Stec is a hilarious read. If you haven't checked out her Grateful Undead series, please do, because it's a riot. And Lilo Abernathy has been producing some of the best urban fantasy I've read in a long time. I can highly recommend all 3 of these writers. Also, go check out Joe Compton of Goindienow, because he's the guy who challenged me. Check out Angela B. Chrysler's Brain to Books blog, website and blog. She's absolutely amazing. And I will see you in the next video.